You're going nowhere in life. Dad's voice echoed through their startup's cramped office space. Playing with your little tech projects while we're trying to build a real business here. I stood in the doorway of TerraTech Solutions, my parents' struggling environmental consulting firm, watching them scramble to prepare for tomorrow's make-or-break investor meeting. The irony of the situation would have been amusing if it wasn't so painfully predictable. We need that loan to survive, Mom added, shuffling through disorganized presentations. Instead of helping us, you're wasting time with your, what do you call it? Coding experiments. Those coding experiments had just revolutionized artificial intelligence in environmental analysis, but they didn't know that. Just like they didn't know that Apex Ventures, the investment firm they were desperately courting, was actually mine. Maybe if you'd taken that junior analyst position at Peterson Corp. Dad started, launching into his favorite lecture. The one that paid half what I make in a day? I muttered under my breath. What was that? Nothing, Dad. Just wondering if you've updated your pitch deck with current market analytics. He waved dismissively. We know what we're doing, Alice. We've been in this business for 20 years. What we need is capital, not advice from our own daughter who can't even hold down a proper job. I glanced around their office, outdated equipment, manila folders stuffed with paper documents, whiteboards covered in last year's projections. They'd refused to digitize, refused to innovate, refused to see that the environmental consulting world had evolved beyond their 1990s business model. My phone buzzed, a message from my COO at Apex. Final acquisition papers ready. Team in position for tomorrow. Sure you want to do this? I looked at my parents, still arguing about font choices for their presentation while their company quietly drowned in debt. They had no idea that their potential investor wasn't interested in giving them a loan. I was going to buy their company. Remember when you were little? Mom said suddenly, her voice softening with nostalgia. You used to play office with your stuffed animals, pretending to be a big executive. I remember, I replied. I also remember you telling me to be more realistic about my goals. Dad snorted. Well, we were right, weren't we? 30 years old, no stable career, just bouncing between those tech projects of yours. Those tech projects had built Apex Ventures into a $5 billion company, but they still saw me as their directionless daughter. Every family dinner was an intervention. Every conversation a thinly veiled lecture about responsibility and stability. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from my head of acquisitions. TerraTech's financials are worse than we thought. They'll be bankrupt in 3 months without intervention. I should go, I said, watching them return to their frantic preparation. Good luck with the meeting tomorrow. You could learn something if you sat in, Dad offered condescendingly. See how real business is done. I smiled, thinking about the morning to come. Oh, I wouldn't miss it. Walking to my car. Not the modest hybrid they saw me drive, but the Aston Martin I kept for special occasions. I called my CEO. Everything set for tomorrow? Yes, Chief. Your parents have no idea that the junior associate they've been corresponding with is actually you. The team's ready for the reveal. I started the engine, watching through the window as my parents stayed late at their dying company, preparing for a meeting whose outcome had been decided 3 months ago when I first discovered their financial troubles. Tomorrow they would learn that their directionless daughter had been their boss all along. Sometimes the best lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. The next morning, TerraTech's office was a symphony of nervous energy. Mom had already spilled coffee twice on her power suit, a dated ensemble that had seen better decades. Dad was practicing his pitch in front of a streaky mirror, his lucky tie slightly askew. I arrived early, dressed in my CEO attire, a perfectly tailored Chanel suit that cost more than their monthly revenue. They didn't notice me slip into the back office, too busy arranging their sad collection of charts and graphs. The Apex team is here, their receptionist announced, causing Mom to drop another cup of coffee. My executive team entered first, all briefed on the situation, all struggling to keep straight faces. Sarah Chin, my COO, led the group, playing her role perfectly. Mr. and Mrs. Walker, she said formally, I'm Sarah Chin, COO of Apex Ventures. We've reviewed your proposal. Dad stepped forward, oozing desperate confidence. We're so pleased you've come. TerraTech has been a family business for 20 years. Yes, Sarah interrupted smoothly. We're very aware of your history. However, before we continue, Arcia would like to join us. Mom brightened. Oh, we weren't expecting. We're honored. You should be, Sarah murmured, just loud enough for my executive team to catch. Several disguised their laughs as coughs. I stood in the doorway, watching my parents straighten their postures, adjust their clothes, prepare to impress the mysterious CEO who held their company's fate in their hands. Good morning, everyone, I said, stepping into the room. The coffee cup Mom had just refilled crashed to the floor. Dad's lucky tie seemed to strangle him of its own accord. Alice, he stammered. Why are you? Chief, Sarah nodded to me, enjoying the show. Shall we begin the acquisition discussion? Chief. Mom's voice hit a note I hadn't heard since my teenage rebellion phase. Please take a seat, I gestured to their own conference table. We have a lot to discuss about TerraTech's future, or lack thereof. They fell into their chairs like puppets with cut strings. Around them, my executive team took their places, pulling out tablets and laptops, technology that made my parents' paper presentations look like cave drawings. Let's start with your financials, I began, pulling up holographic projections that made their charts look like kindergarten art. You're 3 months from bankruptcy, your client base has shrunk by 60% in the last 2 years, and your methodologies are approximately a decade behind industry standards. Now wait just a minute, Dad found his voice, though it quivered. You can't possibly understand. Your company's potential? Actually, Dad, I understand it better than you do. That's why Apex has been watching TerraTech for months, waiting for the right moment to acquire it. Apex. Mom whispered, realization dawning. You're the CEO of Apex Ventures. Founder, and so, I corrected. Those coding experiments you dismissed? They're now the industry standard in environmental analysis. The waste of time projects? They've made Apex the leading environmental tech investment firm in the country. I pulled up more projections. TerraTech's decline graphed against Apex's meteoric rise. While you were telling me to get a real job, I was building a billion-dollar company. Every time you compared me to my successful cousins, I was closing deals larger than their entire careers. That junior analyst position you wanted me to take? The salary wouldn't cover my daily coffee budget. Dad's face had achieved a fascinating new shade of purple. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you. I laughed. Like when I tried to explain my first AI breakthrough, and you interrupted to talk about cousin Jennifer's promotion. Or when I attempted to discuss my investment strategy, and Mom changed the subject to Mrs. Thompson's daughter making assistant manager. Sarah slid acquisition papers across the table. The offer is more than fair, considering TerraTech's current market position. Mom's hands shook as she reached for the documents. But our company, our legacy, will be preserved and modernized, I finished. Though not quite the way you imagined. TerraTech will become a subsidiary of Apex, focused on implementing our AI solutions in environmental consulting. And us? Dad asked, his voice small. Our positions? That depends, I replied, enjoying the role reversal. Are you willing to learn from your directionless daughter? Accept modern methodologies? Adapt to a world where success doesn't look like it did 20 years ago. The silence in the room was deafening. Through the windows, I could see their employees trying not to obviously watch the drama unfolding in the conference room. The choice is yours, I continued. Option 1. Sell TerraTech to Apex, retire with a generous package, and spend your time explaining to your friends how your daughter became your boss. Option 2. Sell TerraTech to Apex, stay on in reduced roles, and learn how a real modern business operates. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures, corporate jargon, and shattered parental expectations. My executive team efficiently processed the acquisition while my parents sat in stunned silence, watching their 20-year-old company transform before their eyes. All the paperwork is complete, Chief, Sarah announced, barely concealing her satisfaction. TerraTech is officially part of Apex Ventures. Mom's perfectly maintained facade had crumbled entirely. Her mascara created abstract art on her cheeks, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dad's lucky tie hung loose around his neck, his confident posture replaced by a defeated slump. Let's address the employees, I said, standing. They should hear about the changes from their new CEO. Alice, Mom's voice cracked. Please. We need to talk about this as a family. Family. I turned back, raising an eyebrow. Like when you talked about my career choices at Sunday dinners. Or when you told the entire country club I was finding myself, while their children were building real careers. The conference room door opened and my younger brother Michael walked in. Another surprise for my parents. Sorry I'm late, sis, he grinned. Traffic was terrible. Mom, Dad, you're looking, well, shocked. Michael. Dad's voice rose an octave. You knew about this? Known for years, he replied, taking a seat. Who do you think helped Alice set up the initial funding for Apex? All those fishing trips I took? We were actually meeting with investors. Mom's coffee cup, her fourth of the morning, slipped from her trembling fingers. But you always said that I was helping Alice figure out her life? Michael laughed. Yeah, I figured you'd believe that easier than the truth, that your lost daughter was building an empire while you weren't looking. I pulled up more displays showing TerraTech's new organizational structure. Michael runs our West Coast operations. He's been instrumental in identifying struggling companies ripe for acquisition and modernization. Companies like TerraTech. You've been planning this? Dad's voice was barely audible. For how long? 3 months, I replied. Ever since your bank contacted Apex about your defaulting loans. Did you really think a major investment firm suddenly became interested in your outdated operation by chance? The reality of their situation seemed to finally hit them. Every dismissive comment, every condescending piece of advice, every missed opportunity to simply listen to their daughter. It had all led to this moment. The employees are gathering in the main area, Sarah reported, returning from a brief exit. They're anxious. They should be, I replied. Half of their jobs are redundant with our AI systems. But unlike some CEOs, I believe in responsible transitions. Everyone will get either retraining opportunities or generous severance packages. Standing up, I straightened my suit, a power move Mom had taught me years ago, though I doubted she appreciated the irony now. Coming. I asked my shell-shocked parents. Your employees should see you accepting this change. It'll make the transition smoother. They followed me like sleepwalkers into the main office area, where their 30 employees waited nervously. The contrast between my executive team's sleek professionalism and TerraTech's dated atmosphere was striking. Good morning, everyone, I began, my voice carrying easily through the space. I'm Alice Walker, CEO of Apex Ventures, and as of today, your new chief executive. The ripple of whispers was immediate. Everyone knew me as the owner's unsuccessful daughter who occasionally visited the office. TerraTech is now a subsidiary of Apex Ventures. Over the next 6 months, we'll be implementing comprehensive modernization of all systems and procedures. Each of you will have the opportunity to retrain on our AI platforms. Those who choose not to adapt will receive substantial severance packages. I could see the mix of fear and hope on their faces. Unlike my parents, most of them knew the company was failing. Your former owners, I gestured to my still stunned parents, will be taking some time to decide their future roles. In the meantime, Apex's transition team will begin work immediately. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of meetings, assessments, and introductions. My parents sat in their old offices, watching as their life's work was systematically deconstructed and rebuilt. Finally, as the day wound down, they asked for the private conversation I'd been expecting. Why? Mom asked simply, her voice raw. Why didn't you tell us what you were building? I leaned against their office door, looking at the dated decor that would be gone by tomorrow. Would you have believed me? Or would you have tried to take control like you did with everything else in my life? We were trying to protect you, Dad protested weakly. The business world is harsh. Protect me. I laughed. Let me tell you about protection, Dad. Remember Wilson Computing? They tried to steal our AI patents last year. Called me little girl in the negotiations. Want to know what happened to them? Dad's face paled further. Wilson Computing's mysterious collapse had been big news in their industry. Or how about Green Solutions? When they attempted to undercut our environmental analysis tools. I continued. They don't exist anymore. I bought them for pennies on the dollar and redistributed their assets. That was you. Mom's voice cracked. But those were multi-million-dollar deals. Actually, those were just minor acquisitions. Last quarter's small print. I straightened up. While you were telling everyone I was finding myself, I was building something bigger than you could imagine. Every time you bragged about someone else's child's success, I was closing deals larger than their entire family's net worth. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 2 decades of misunderstandings and missed connections. What happens now? Dad finally asked, looking older than I'd ever seen him.